Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast. Make sure you join our community on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished, you'll find us. Also check out preppedandpolished.com to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Have a question during the podcast or after the podcast? Submit your question to radio@preppedandpolished.com. Today's guest is Jackie Stachel, a senior executive function coach of Beyond Booksmart, a quality academic coaching company that helps students learn valuable executive function skills. Jackie earned her master's degree in speech-language pathology from Boston University. Now, on today's episode, Jackie shares some of the struggles students face with executive function issues and enlightens us with strategies for those wanting to overcome their executive function challenges. And she even shares an amazing app that you can download if you're easily distracted so you can work and get things done. Let's get to today's guest. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Alexis.
Can you share with us a bit of your background, perhaps focusing on a few pivotal life moments that brings you with us today as a senior executive function coach who helps students overcome their executive functioning challenges?
Well, I started out as a speech-language pathologist. I was working at Needham High School. I was there for about 5 years.
Nice.
I worked with students there on everything from social skills to speech fluency, on a lot of different areas that, fell under the purview of speech and language. And I found that over time, helping students learn the self-management skills, those executive function skills, was really the most fulfilling aspect of what I did. So I started working part-time as a coach for Beyond Booksmart, and then made the leap to becoming full-time with them. And, I haven't looked back since. I'm really pleased that I made that choice. Part of my training in speech-language pathology, it involves executive function. So, I kind of came to the field of executive function coaching with a really deep understanding about language and, how language serves us to help us solve problems. It's that, I guess I can describe it as a kind of this inner dialogue that we have with ourselves, whether it's telling ourselves, I'm okay when we're feeling a little bit nervous or anxious, or telling ourselves, hey, I need to remember to bring my science textbook today. It's the ability to have these really good inner dialogues that can make the difference between success and failure when you're facing a challenge. And, I'm really passionate about helping people manage their lives more effectively. And executive function coaching is how I do that.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit about Beyond Booksmart, where you are senior coach and director of communication. What types of services do you provide? Do you work online? That kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we are in several states now, Massachusetts, New York, Chicago, and, we continue to expand our services. So what we do is we provide personalized one-to-one coaching in clients' homes, and we help students learn skills like time management and organization, self-regulation, planning and prioritizing, things like that. So essentially we help students learn how to be productive and confident and ready to meet challenges that, go beyond a particular subject or a grade level. We do also use Skype to coach some students. That's a particularly growing area of our business. And we've found that college students in particular really, really love Skype. It's super convenient for them, and they really find the Skype sessions very, very useful. I can say it was a learning process for me to realize that there's actually really little that I can do in an in-person session that I can't do in a Skype session. The screen sharing is a great thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's getting a lot better too.
It is.
Remind the audience what is executive function disorder. I was curious how many students have it, and how many students may not know that they have it.
Okay. Well, to be really crystal clear, I'm not a person who evaluates or diagnoses executive function disorder. A neuropsychologist, that's their realm. That's what they do. As coaches, sometimes we'll take a look at those reports, and some of their recommendations and their findings will help inform us with our coaching priorities. But kind of in broad strokes, executive function disorder, it's used to describe this constellation of symptoms. It can include things like kind of distractibility, difficulty starting tasks and sticking with them until they're done, disorganization, some trouble regulating emotions sometimes, or impulsivity, poor self-awareness, sometimes trouble transitioning from one set of expectations to another. That's a flexibility component there. I mean, so some of the students that we see have ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and along with ADHD also comes executive function challenges. I think it's important to note, kind of labels aside, Alexis, I think it's really important to note that folks don't have to have a diagnosis or a disorder to benefit from executive function coaching. I mean, even for adults, many of us have kind of these like relative weaknesses in these areas, in some of these executive function areas. I mean, I'll share with you that I actually can have a hard time sticking with like a frustrating or a lengthy task. And so, what do I do with that? Well, I use strategies that help me persist. So I use strategies like chunking my work into small, digestible, pieces. So I'll use benchmarks for helping me, continue the process. And sometimes I'll just use like little small incentives to help me be productive.
That's amazing. And does that mean, does Beyond Booksmart work with adults too?
We do work with adults. It's not a huge part of our business, but we do have some adult clients. In fact, I have a couple myself.
Fantastic. So you work with hundreds of students, and what are some obstacles, some overlapping obstacles that the students that you see face? Maybe one or two of your go-to strategies for helping them overcome their EF challenges.
I think in speaking with my colleagues, one really common obstacle these days is just the ability to manage distractions, typically online distractions, and maintaining productivity. So many students, we find they kind of kid themselves that they can do things like watch Amy Schumer videos and do their calculus homework simultaneously, right? I mean, sure, it sounds fun and it might feel like you're multitasking and doing lots of things, but truly, I think the science is there that says we're just fooling ourselves. What people are really doing in that kind of a scenario is they're just depleting their brain energy, their cognitive energy, they're just rapidly switching attention back and forth between these things. And there's a definite cost to it. In your brain, you have to disengage attention from one target, then you have to engage attention on the next, and then you have this cycle of disengagement and engagement that's super inefficient, and it just results in some lost information along the line. I mean, it's not a big deal if you lose information on a comedy video, right? You can kind of back it up a little ways and look at it again. Yeah. But it's a bigger deal, Alexis, if you're on like step 13 of a 30-step calculus problem, right?
Oh, absolutely. You don't want to get lost.
Absolutely, right? So, I think one of the go-to strategies that I love to suggest to students and adults alike, if they find themselves continually being distracted, with the online sources, is to download a free app called Self-Control. It's great. Self-Control is for the Mac. I think there's one called Stay Focused for PC users, and it just helps you block out distracting websites. So you choose whatever ones are giving you the most trouble, and how long the blocking lasts. So you can block them out for 5 minutes. You can block them out for 5 hours, and it's a diabolical application, Alexis, because once you hit go, ain't nothing you can do to bring it back.
Nice.
So you can't uninstall the application. You can't reboot your computer. It's gonna block those things for the amount of time that you set, prior to hitting go. So it can be very, very, very effective as a tool. I mean, you do have to have the wherewithal to list those sites and to hit the go button, absolutely. And those are the kinds of things that we coach students into doing. But once you try it a couple times and you just kind of take a look and say, dear God, I just spent 2 hours and I finished my homework, and it usually takes me 5. So sometimes right there can be the revelation that makes a student go, oh yeah, I can do this.
That's amazing. So do you make the downloading of that app mandatory for all kids, or do you kind of just leave it up to the kid and the family to decide and make sure they want to download that?
That's a great question. So our model is we don't force anything. We know that when students make changes in their behavior, it's because they personally see the need to do it and they personally take control. Anything that we force them to do is not going to be an internalized behavior. And what do we want? I mean, we want them to eventually be completely independent and to learn how to manage themselves. So we gradually and carefully work with students to help them gain the insight, to have them say, aha, I think I do need this tool. So, I mean, with some students, they get very nervous when we download this because I'll just do a quick little demo. But it's really to help desensitize them, right? So I'll be really transparent about it. I'll say, dude, all right, I'm just going to sit with you here. we're gonna do 2 of your time drain websites, and we're going to click go. But dude, we're going to do it for 5 minutes. Just stick with me here, 5 minutes, and we watch it count down. And hey, you lived through that, didn't you? Yeah, okay. And then the next step might be, okay, well, trying to get a student to see if they might commit to experimenting with it, even for 15 minutes. When they start their homework,
right.
It's those little tiny increments. And then we help them reflect, what was that like for you? And that's the way that we help them with their behavior change.
Love it. Can you share with us a success story where maybe you've seen a student come to you with some EF deficits, after some strategies, some coaching, students able to make significant progress?
Yeah, I love stories like this. I think I'm gonna pick this one student who came to me after a few failed attempts at college, actually. So he was a little bit older, and he got evaluated at NESCA, and he was referred to us for coaching. And when I first met this young man, he had a completely unstructured lifestyle. He had random sleep-wake cycles. He had poor eating habits. He did not exercise, and he had a lot of trouble with, we call it goal-directed persistence, but it's really just sticking with a task until it's done. And in the time I've worked with him for a couple of years now, in the time we've worked together, he applied to college. He got accepted to a very desirable program. He's a student in very good standing. He's learned how to structure his time. He's learned how to be productive and make healthy choices. Like I said, his GPA is outstanding. He's definitely on track to graduate. And I think, more than all those small details, he's a confident person now. He has a confidence and a competence that just had eluded him for so many years. So that's definitely a success story in my eyes, and I'm sure if we chatted with him, he would feel be pretty successful too.
That's inspirational. What do you love most about your work?
Well, it's a hard thing to choose one thing, but I think it's because a lot of my work is one-to-one with in students' homes, and I think feeling like I'm part of their families when I walk in the door. I say hi to the pets, I say hi to the siblings. I know my students' daily lives. It's not just about the big exam that I'm helping them to prepare for. I know that they've got a big game coming up. I know when they have, an interview for summer work, or when they've had their driver's test. I know about all these events in their lives. So I have this unique opportunity to see the full, complete student, in their home context, where they've got to be productive amidst distractions like the siblings, like the pets, like the television, right? And that's the kind of thing that helps me. It customizes my strategies for students, and in turn, when I can customize my strategies, it makes them much more likely to use them. And each time I go into their home, I see evidence of them, using strategies and feeling good about it, and I feel great.
Wow. Sign me up. Now, I'm assuming that once you get booked, you can definitely make referrals to other associates in the firm.
Oh, absolutely. We've got, oh my gosh, I think we have close to 80 coaches now, and we're demand is always, quite large. So
Nice.
we're always hiring really good people and training really good people. So we've been really proud that we've been able to meet demand pretty successfully in the past few years.
Awesome. And how can we get in touch with you and the firm?
So we have a toll-free number for Beyond Booksmart, and that's 844-337-5455. And if you spell it out, it's 844-EF Skills.
Ooh, okay.
I know,
That's easy.
pretty good, right?
Yep. That's good. And to any teens listening to us today, can you give them a piece of advice before they cross that bridge to college?
I think the one thing I would have them consider is gain insight as to how you work best. There's no one perfect way to be productive. And it's through an honest self-reflection that a person can start to figure out, what are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? And it's completely normal to have an uneven pattern of, weaknesses and strengths. That's fine. It's when you gain insight, then you can, compensate for your trouble areas, and you can decide on what strategies and tools you're going to use to compensate for those tricky areas. I think, too often, making excuses or blaming circumstances like teachers or classmates, that's just a real dead end. And as a student, if you find yourself doing that, it's time to take stock, really, be able to take a hard look at yourself and ask, what could I have done differently? For me, as a coach, I think that's really the path to true growth and effectiveness.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. Before we let you go, is there anything else you got going on that we can share with the listeners?
I think that we have summer coaching going on right now. We have
Nice.
a lot of our students have finished their school year. But we have more and more families that are realizing that summer coaching can be really great to help students plan and manage their summer reading, for example, to help plan and work on writing skills in the context of summer reading. Also to help on things like, time management and planning outside of the pressures of a full course load.
Oh, definitely.
So I think that's a big thing that we're seeing now, and we're getting quite a few parents who want to sign their kids up for maybe 4 sessions, 6 sessions. We also have a good amount of families that want their rising high school seniors to work with executive function coaches to plan and prioritize the application process. So we have some really cool tools that we use to help organize the whole, pretty confusing and overwhelming process with them.
Oh, fantastic. Love it. Jackie, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Appreciate your time.
Oh, it has been so much fun, Alexis. I appreciate it.
And this wraps up our show today with Jackie Stachel, Senior Executive Coach of the executive coaching firm Beyond Booksmart. Go to www.beyondbooksmart.com to learn about Jackie's amazing work helping others overcome their executive function challenges. And make sure you be on the lookout for our next podcast episode, number 79. It will be a tutoring tips episode. And to dive further into executive function and learn more skills, check out my podcast with executive function expert Sarah Ward. That was podcast number 32. It was called Strategies for Improving Executive Function Skills. Just go to preppedandpolished.com/podcast to access Sarah's episode number 32 and all of our episodes. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.